Hey guys, tonight we are diving headfirst into the foggy, gaslit streets of the past to explore some of the strangest gadgets ever invented for a good night's sleep. And by good night's sleep, I sometimes mean surviving the walk home so you can actually get to your bed. Honestly, if you were dropped into our story's starting point, the odds of you making it through your first evening stroll are, well, let's just say you'd want some protection. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps the channel find other people who enjoy these quiet, late-night journeys into history. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments what city you're in and what time it is for you. I love seeing where everyone is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air is thick, so thick you can almost taste a cocktail of coal smoke, damp earth, and the distant, murky breath of the River Thames. It's Victorian London, sometime in the mid-1860 seconds. Gas lights flicker overhead, but their glow is feeble, swallowed by a dense, yellow-grey fog that clings to everything. The fog muffles out, turning the clip-clop of a faraway horse-drawn carriage into a ghostly rhythm. Your own footsteps on the damp cobblestones are the only clear sound in your immediate world. This is your walk home. It's late, the respectable folk are long abed, and the streets belong to the shadows. And in these shadows, a very specific fear has taken root in the city's heart, the Garrotting, a new breed of street thief. There's who attacks from behind, silently, with a wire or a strong arm to the throat. It's a terrifying thought, and the newspapers have been having a field day with it, splashing tales of violent muggings across their front pages. But you're not entirely defenseless. Before you left the house tonight, you put on a rather special piece of neckwear. It's called an Anti-Garroting Cravat. To the casual observer, it looks like a fashionable, if somewhat stiff, color, but you know it's secret. Beneath the respectable silk or fabric is a reinforced leather, or even a thin metal band, and nestled discreetly within its folds, pointing outwards, are a series of small, sharp spikes. It's the original neck, minus SOY of self minus defense. You reach up and touch it. The fabric is smooth, but you can feel the rigid structure underneath. It's not exactly comfortable. It forces your posture to be perfectly, unnaturally straight. But as you navigate a particularly dark alley, the discomfort is a small price to pay for the peace of mind it offers. The idea is simple should a thief try to wrap an arm around your neck from behind. Therefore, arm will meet a very unpleasant, spiky surprise. Hopefully, the shock and pain would be enough to make them release their grip and give you a chance to run. This wasn't just a one-off crackpot invention. It was a genuine response to a phenomenon known as the Garrotting panic. For a couple of years in the 1850 seconds and again in the 1860 seconds, London society was gripped by a moral panic. Was the city truly overrun with these silent, choking thieves? Or was it a case of media sensationalism fanning the flames of public fear? Historians still debate this question. Some argue the crime wave was real, a symptom of urban poverty and inadequate policing. Others suggest that the newspapers, in a fierce battle for readership, exaggerated a few isolated incidents into a full-blown epidemic, creating a market for fear, and for gadgets like the one you're wearing. You pass by a woman hurrying in the other direction. You nod politely, and she clutches her handbag a little tighter. You notice the glint of her own defensive, exceptionally long and sharp hat pin, held at the ready. That's a fascinating little piece of hidden history. Right there, the humble hat pin is an improvised weapon. While your cravat was a product designed for a specific panic, a woman's hat pin was a ubiquitous accessory that could, in a pinch, serve as a very effective deterrent against an unwanted advance. It was a multi-minus to love the Victorian-era fashion, function, and resort personal security. As you continue your walk, you can't help but feel a little bit ridiculous. You're a walking paradox, a civilized gentleman, wearing what is essentially a dog-spiked collar disguised as high fashion. It's the perfect embodiment of the Victorian mind, obsessed with propriety and appearances on the surface, but deeply anxious about the chaos and violence lurking just beneath. The cravat isn't just protecting your neck, it's protecting an entire way of life, a sense of order in a rapidly changing, often frightening new world. Finally, you see the familiar silhouette of your own townhouse, your front door. The relief is a palpable thing, a warmth that spreads through your chest. You fumble for your key, the sound of the lock turning, echoing loudly in the quiet street. You step inside, leaving the fog and the fear behind you. The first thing you do is reach for the buckle on your Anti-Garroting Cravat. With a sigh of relief, you undo it, freeing your neck. The contraption feels heavy and awkward in your hands. You've survived the journey. Now, for a safe night's sleep. But, as you'll soon discover, the peculiar gadgets don't stop at the front door. You slide the heavy bolt across the door. The sound is a satisfying, deep thump, a fortress. But one lock isn't enough to soothe the anxieties of the age. Your gaze drifts to a small, intricate device mounted on the door frame itself. It's your burglar alarm, a marvel of brass and wood, and your last line of defense for the night. It's not a subtle thing. It's a proud, mechanical declaration that this home is protected. To arm it, you perform a small, careful ritual. First, you pull back a spring-loaded hammer, much like the action of an old pistol. It clicks into place, held by a delicate trigger. Then, you take a tiny, copper disc from a nearby box. It's a percussion cap, the very same kind used in firearms of the day, filled with a minuscule amount of fulminative mercury. You carefully place this cap onto a small nipple, directly in the path of the waiting hammer. Finally, you adjust a thin metal rod that connects the trigger mechanism to the edge of the door. If the door is pushed open by even an inch while this device is armed, the rod will be nudged, the trigger will release, the hammer will snap forward, and it will strike the percussion cap. The result? A deafening BANG, loud enough to wake you, your family, your neighbors, and most importantly to send any would-be thief scrambling back into the fog from whence they came, their ears ringing and their nerves shattered. There's no snooze button on this alarm. This little gadget is a direct consequence of the era's success. The Industrial Revolution created a booming middle class, and for the first time in history, average families began to own things, not just necessities, but nice things, silver-plated tea sets, mantel clocks, good furniture, perhaps a music box. Your home is no longer just a shelter. It's a container for your wealth and status. And this, of course, made it a much more tempting target for those with less. The rise of the home burglar is a key social development of the 19th century, running parallel to the rise of consumer culture. Suddenly, there was a whole new market for fear, and an even bigger one for the promise of security. As you check the windows, you contemplate the sheer ingenuity that went into these devices. Yours is a common model, but you've seen advertisements in magazines for far more elaborate systems. This is a neat little bit of forgotten history, the Victorian obsession with mechanical security. There were patents for alarms that, upon being tripped, would use flash powder to take a photograph of the intruder, a primitive security camera. Others were designed to drop a net from the ceiling. One particularly ambitious design involved a tripwire that, when broken, would simultaneously ring a bell in the master bedroom and fire a blank charge from a device that looked suspiciously like a small cannon mounted in the hallway. Historians still argue about whether the crime rates truly justified this level of paranoia, or if it was simply a new form of conspicuous consumption showing your neighbors that you not only had things worth stealing, but you also had the very latest technology to protect them. You move to the large window in the drawing room, which looks out on the darkened street. You set a similar device there, a slightly different model designed for a sash window. If the window is slid open, a tiny lever will trip, another hammer will fall, another cap will explode. It's a strange feeling, rigging your own home with what are essentially miniature, non-lethal firearms. You're surrounding yourself with a perimeter of controlled violence to keep the uncontrolled kind out. The quiet of the house is now profound. It's a silence that is held in tension, a silence that's listening. Every creak of the floorboards as the house settles seems amplified. Your ears are attuned to the slightest noise from outside. Was that a footstep, or just the wind? The silence is the point. Of course, the moment it's broken by the sharp crack of the alarm, you'll know your peace has been shattered. Here's a peculiar little detail about these alarms. They were often sold through mail-minus order catalogs, right alongside advertisements for courses, plowshares, and cure-minus all patent medicines. You could literally order a device that makes a sound like a gunshot and have it delivered to your door by the postman. It speaks volumes about the era's blend of practicality and anxiety. You need to feel, you need to sense your waist, and you need to scare the living daylights out of anyone who tries to climb through your window at 2. All valid consumer needs. With the ground floor secured, you finally feel you can retreat upstairs. You pick up a single candlestick, the flame dancing and casting low, distorted shadows on the walls as you ascend the staircase. The house is still. The fog outside presses against the glass. The little brass alarms on the door and window stand as silent, patient sentinels. They are a promise of a loud, abrupt awakening as things go wrong. But for now, they are part of the ritual of creating a peaceful night. You faced the dangers of the street and secured your home from the dangers of the night. Now, all that's left is to prepare your own mind and body for rest. And even that involves its own peculiar set of gadgets. You arrive in the relative sanctuary of your bedroom. The air here is warmer, more personal. You set the candlestick down on your dressing table, its flame reflecting in the large mirror. And next to the mirror, beside a simple hairdress and porcelain water basin, sits another of the era's strange marvels, the electric hairdress. It's an object of peculiar beauty. The handle is made of a dark, polished wood or perhaps an early plastic like celluloid, and the back is a smooth, curved piece of metal. The bristles are what catch your eye. They aren't ordinary animal hair or plant fiber. Instead, they are fine, magnetized metal wires, set into a base that's connected to the metal backing. It's called Dr. Scott's electric hairbrush, and the advertisement's claim is a modern miracle. You pick it up. It has a surprising heft. There are no cords, no plugs, no batteries you can see. Its electricity is, in reality, magnetism. The inventor, Dr. J. Scott, claimed that the brush contained a permanently magnetized iron rod. The theory, as explained in the ads, was that this electric current would flow from the brush, through your hair, and into your scalp. And what would this magical current do? Well, pretty much everything. The advertisements promised it would cure nervous headaches, bilious headaches, and neuralgia. It would prevent baldness, stop hair from falling out, and even restore hair color from gray to its original youthful shade. It promised to soothe the weary brain, promote healthy circulation, and, most importantly for our journey, ensure a deep and restful sleep. It was a panacea in a brush. You draw it through your hair. The metal bristles feel cool and surprisingly gentle against your scalp. There's no tingle, no shock, no discernible sensation of electric life flowing into your brain. It feels like a brush, a slightly scratchy, heavy brush, but the power of suggestion is strong. After a long, anxious day, the simple, repetitive motion of brushing your hair is inherently calming. The advertisements have planted a seed in your mind. This is not just grooming. It is treatment. You are actively combating the day's stresses, brushing away the nervous energy, preparing your mind for slumber. This gadget perfectly captures a key aspect of the late Victorian era, the dawn of the electrical age and the public's simultaneous fascination and ignorance about what electricity actually was. It was a mysterious, invisible force that could power factories, light up cities, and send messages across oceans in an instant. It was, for all intents and purposes, magic. So why couldn't it also cure a headache? Entrepreneurs and quasi-miners, medical experts like that. Scott jumped into this gap of understanding, slapping the word electric onto everything from hairdress and cost to belts and body plasters. It was the 19th-century equivalent of adding quanta are more narrow to a product today. Here's a quirky little fact about this trend. The electric craze got so big that you could buy electric rings to wear on your fingers, supposedly to treat rheumatism by creating a continuous healing circuit through your body. Of course, they were just rings made of two different metals, but the marketing was brilliant. You set the brush down and look at your reflection. Does your hair look any fuller? Is the gray at your temples receding? Probably not. The scientific basis for these claims is, to put it mildly, non-existent, and historians view these devices as a classic example of medical quackery and opportunistic marketing. Yet, you can't deny the psychological effect, the ritual of using the brush, the belief that you are doing something modern and scientific to aid your well-minus being, is in itself a powerful soporific. It's a form of self-care, filtered through the lens of technological optimism. You've brought the great, mysterious force of electricity into your bedroom, tamed it, and put it to work for your personal peace. This brush represents a shift in how people thought about sleep. It wasn't just about being safe from intruders anymore. Now, it was about optimizing the body itself. The problem of sleep slins was moving from an external threat, the Garrotting, the Burglar, to an internal one, a weary brain, nervous energy. The solutions, therefore, also had to become more personal, more intimate. They had to go inside the body, or at least pretend to. You feel a little calmer now. The methodical brushing, the quiet focus, it has slowed your breathing. Maybe there's something to it after all, even if it's not the magic draw Scott promised. Perhaps the real current wasn't electric, that's psychological. The belief that you held a piece of the future in your hand, a tool to control the frailties of your own body and mind. With your treatment complete, you turn your attention from your head to your bed. It stands in the center of the room, a large, wooden framed structure. It looks inviting, but getting a truly comfortable night's sleep in it requires another, much more low-step, but equally crucial, ritual. You approach your bed, not just to lie down, but to perform a crucial piece of nightly maintenance. The mattress, a thick sack stuffed with feathers, straw, or perhaps horsehair, doesn't rest on a modern box spring or solid wooden slats. Instead, it lies upon a lattice of ropes. These ropes are threaded through holes drilled along the wooden bed frame, crisscrossing from side to side and from head to foot, creating a woven, slightly springy web. And over the course of a day or two of being slept on, this web begins to sag. If you were to just climb in now, you'd find yourself sinking into a deep, uncomfortable trough in the middle, your body curved like a hammock. A truly restful night is impossible in such a state. So, you reach for a tool left conveniently at the bedside, a bed key. It's a simple, robust device, usually made of iron or wood, shaped like a large T or a crank. It has a slot or a hook on one end designed to grip the rope. You insert the key onto one of the ropes where it wraps around the frame. You brace your foot against the bedpost and you pull. It takes a surprising amount of strength. With a loud groan from the rope and a creak from the wooden frame, you tighten it, pulling the slack out of the weave. Then you move to the next rope, and the next, working your way around the entire bed, tightening each one. It's a physical, repetitive task. Pull, groan, creak, pull, groan, creak. You are literally tuning your bed, much like a musician tunes a stringed instrument, searching for the right tension. This is the origin of the common English phrase, sleep tight. It wasn't just a metaphorical wish for a sound sleep. It was a literal instruction for your ancestors. Sleeping tight meant sleeping on ropes that had been pulled taut to provide a firm, flat, and comfortable surface. When someone wished you to sleep tight, they were wishing you the luxury of a well-maintained bed. As you work, you can feel the sweat beading on your brow. This is manual labor, a far cry from the effortless electric cure of Dr. Scott's brush. It connects you to a much older, more fundamental aspect of sleep. The comfort of your bed isn't a given. It's something you have to create, to earn, through your own effort each night. This system of rope beds was the standard for centuries, from humble cottages to grand manors. Historians and archaeologists studying old furniture often debate the specifics of the weaving patterns. Were certain patterns regional? Did some offer more support than others? It seems like a trivial detail, but it speaks to the hidden, everyday engineering that went into ensuring a basic human need. It's a history that isn't written in books, but in the scuff marks on a bedpost and the wear patterns on a bed key. Here's a curious side effect of this design: it was a paradise for pests. The straw minus or feather minus filled mattress was an inviting home for fleas, lice, and bed bugs. The phrase "good night, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite" was not a cute nursery rhyme. It was a genuine piece of nightly advice. Part of the bed minus making ritual often involved taking the mattress outside to be beaten, aired out, and hopefully dislodged of its unwelcome inhabitant. You look at your own mattress and make a mental note to have the maid do just that tomorrow. You give a final, mighty heave on the last row. You run your hand over the rope lattice. It's firm, taut, tight. You then hoist the heavy mattress back on top, smoothing it out. The difference is immediate. The surface is now relatively flat and supportive. It's ready. This whole process highlights a stark difference between then and now. Today, we buy a mattress with a 10-year warranty, place it on a frame, and forget about it. The comfort is built -in, outsourced to factories and material science. For you, in this moment, comfort is a verb. It's an action. The bed is not a passive object, but an active participant in your nightly routine, one that demands your attention and your strength. The Anti-Garroting Cravat protected you from the street. The burglar alarm protects you from the intruder. The electric brush was meant to soothe your mind. And the bed key, this simple, humble tool, allows you to prepare your physical space for rest. Each gadget, in its own way, is an attempt to carve out a small island of peace and safety in a world that often feels anything but. But there's one more element to contend with before you can finally pull up the covers. The room is getting cold. The fire in the grate is burned down to embers, and a damp chill is starting to seep in from the walls. You need warmth, and the solution for that is another piece of low-minus tech, but highly effective ingenuity. The chill in the room is starting to become noticeable, a damp cold that seems to radiate from the very walls of the house. You can see your breath bloom faintly in the candlelight. Climbing into bed now would mean slipping between icy sheets, a shock to the system that would chase away any hope of immediate sleep. You need to pre-warm the bed, and for that, you turn to one of history's most intimate and slightly bizarre hot water bottles, the pig's bladder. Sitting on a stool by the now-dying fireplace is a stoneware pitcher of hot water, kept warm by the residual heat of the embers. And next to it is the device itself. It's a cleaned, cured, and preserved pig's bladder, which looks like a deflated, yellowish, leathery pouch with a small opening at one end, often fitted with a simple wooden plug or a screw-stop. It's a surprisingly common household item, a testament to the pre-industrial mindset of using every part of the animal. Nothing goes to waste. You pick it up. It's soft, pliable, and has a faint, earthy smell. Using a small funnel, you carefully pour the hot, not boiling water from the pitcher into the bladder. You have to be careful. Too hot and you could damage it. Or worse, it could burst in the bed later. You fill it about to -3 full. Then squeeze out the excess air before securely fastening the plug. No, it's a warm, heavy, squishy wool. It's strangely organic, feeling much more like a living thing than a rubber hot water bottle ever could. You pull back the heavy quilt and thick woolen blankets on your now tightened beddings, bide the warm bladder between the sheets. You'll move it around a bit, warming the foot of the bed, then the area where your back will be, creating a cozy little nest in the vast coldness of the mattress. This simple tool is ancient, a technique used for centuries before the advent of rubber vulcanization in the mid-19th century, which eventually gave us the modern hot water bottle. Before rubber, people used what was available. Ceramic or metal containers, often called bed warmers, were common, but they were rigid, heavy, and could be dangerously hot. The pig's bladder was superior in many ways. It was soft, conformed to the body, and held heat for a surprisingly long time. It was the original ergonomic warmer. Of course, it wasn't without its drawbacks. Here's a little tidbit for you. They were notoriously prone to leaks. Imagine the sheer misery of being woken up in the middle of a freezing night, not by a noise, but by a slowly spreading puddle of lukewarm, slightly PD- smelling water. It's a uniquely historical form of discomfort. The quality of the bladder and the security of its stopper were paramount. A cheap or poorly made one was a disaster waiting to happen. Historians and curators who find these artifacts sometimes have trouble distinguishing them from other pouches made of animal organs, like wine skins or water canteens. The context in which they are found is everything, but their prevalence in domestic settings across Europe for hundreds of years points to a shared, universal experience of seeking warmth and comfort on a cold night. It was a sensory world we've largely forgotten. A world where the objects you used for comfort were directly connected to the farm and the slaughterhouse. You can't help but contrast this with the electric brush you just used. One represents the future, a clean, mysterious, scientific force. The other represents the past, an earthy, visceral, and slightly messy solution derived from nature. Your bedroom, in this moment, is a microcosm of the Victorian-era's great transition. You are living between two worlds, the agricultural and the industrial, the organic and the mechanical. You check the bed. The sheets are no longer icy but pleasantly, deeply warm. The heat has spread, creating a welcoming pocket of coziness. It's a gentle, radiant warmth, far more comforting than the dry, aggressive heat of modern central heating. It's a reminder that for most of human history, warmth was a precious commodity, something to be captured, contained, and applied with care. It wasn't something you could just summon by turning a dial on the wall. You're finally ready. The street is quiet, the house is secure, the bed is tight, and a warm spot awaits you. You undress, your movements slow and deliberate in the flickering candlelight. You're about to extinguish the candle and slip into bed, but as you do, you glance towards the window. The fog is still thick outside, and it reminds you of another pervasive fear of the era, one that didn't involve thieves or cold, but the very air you were breathing, even in the perceived safety of your own bedroom. Just as you're about to snuff out the candle, you pause. Your gaze is fixed on the window. It's shut tight, of course, to keep out the chill and the fog, but it's not just the cold you're keeping at bay. You are, in your mind, barricading yourself against the miasma, the bad air. This was one of the great anxieties of the 19th century, a pervasive belief that disease, decay, and even moral corruption were carried on the night air. The miasma theory was the dominant medical theory before the germ theory of disease took hold later in the century. Doctors and the public alike believed that illnesses like cholera, chlamydia, and the Black Death were caused by inhaling miasmata, a form of noxious air rising from rotting organic matter, swamps, and polluted water. The fog outside, in your mind, isn't just water vapor and coal smoke. It's a visible manifestation of this threat, a carrier of unseen poisons and pestilence. Your bedroom, therefore, must be a sealed sanctuary. But here's the paradox: you also believe that a complete lack of ventilation was dangerous. Stagnant, stuffy air was seen as unhealthy, filled with the body's own exhalations and impurities. This created a terrible dilemma. How do you let in good fresh air without also letting in the bad night air? The solution was a whole category of peculiar window gadgets. You look at your own sash window. It's a standard design, but many of your more health-conscious or paranoid neighbors had installed special contraptions. One popular invention was the window ventilator. It was a simple but ingenious board of wood or a pane of glass that you would place in the open gap at the bottom of the window. This would block a direct draft, but by raising the bottom sash slightly, it would create a gap where the two sashes met in the middle. The idea was that fresh air could flow in through this central gap, but it would be directed upwards, towards the ceiling, allowing it to circulate and mix with the room's warmer air before descending. You get ventilation without the chilling, miasma-filled draft. Another, more elaborate device was the air-purifying ventilator, a box-like contraption that fitted into the window opening. Inside the box was a filter, often made of cotton wool or charcoal, and sometimes even moistened with a disinfectant like carbolic acid. The air would have to pass through this filter before entering the room, supposedly being scrubbed of its impurities. Historians still find patents for these devices and debate how widespread their actual use was. Were they a common feature in middle-class homes, or a niche product for the excessively health-conscious, the hypochondriacs of the Victorian age? You don't have one of these, but the principle has influenced how you manage your room. You've left the small transom window above your bedroom door cracked open just a sliver, hoping to create a gentle current of air from the slightly warmer hallway, rather than risk opening the main window to the street. It's a compromise, a calculated risk. This fear of the air itself led to some truly strange domestic habits. Here's a little known fact: many people, influenced by this theory, would sleep with their heads propped up high on a mountain of pillows. They believed this would keep their mouths and noses elevated above the layer of bad air that was thought to settle near the floor during the night. It also explains the heavy, full-length draperies you see in so many Victorian bedrooms. They weren't just for decoration or blocking light. They were seen as a barrier, another layer of fabric to filter the air that seeped in around the window frames. Your own heavy velvet curtains are drawn tight, a plush, final defense against the night. The irony is heartbreaking. While people were meticulously trying to filter the air coming into their homes, the real source of diseases like cholera was often the water coming from the pump right down the street, contaminated with sewage. They were literally barricading the windows while drinking the poison. It's a powerful reminder of how a flawed scientific model can shape the physical world and the daily habits of millions, all in the pursuit of safety. You are living in a fortress of your own making. The spiked cravat for the street, the alarm for the door, the tight ropes for your back, the warm bladder for the cold, and the sealed window for the air. Every step of your evening has been a ritual of defense. It's exhausting. The pursuit of a perfect, safe sleep is a full-time job. Finally, you decide the risk of a slight draft from the hallway is acceptable. You've done all you can. You blow out the candle, plunging the room into near-total darkness, the only light being the faint, grey glow filtering through the heavy curtains. You slip into bed. The warmth from the pig's bladder is a blessing. You pull the covers up high, almost to your nose, but as you lie there, settling into the long-awaited comfort, a new sound begins to intrude from the world outside. It's not a threat, but it's an annoyance, and it's a sound that the next generation of sleep gadgets will have to fight. You lie in the darkness, cocooned in the warmth you've so carefully cultivated. The bed is tight, the house is secure, the air feels clean. This should be the moment of blissful surrender to sleep. But it isn't, because through the heavy curtains, through the glass, through the very brickwork of the house, a new sound begins to assert itself. It's the sound of the city itself, a low, persistent tremble. It's the clatter of iron-shod wheels on cobblestones as a late-night delivery cart makes its way to market. It's the distant, mournful whistle of a steam train, a sound that carries for miles on the damp night air. It's the shout of a drunken reveler making his way home from the pub. And underneath it all is a constant, almost subliminal hum, the sound of industry, of factories that never truly sleep. Your peaceful, domestic sanctuary is an island in a sea of noise. This is a relatively new problem. In your parents' or grandparents' time, the night was defined by silence, broken only by the sounds of nature or the church bell. But the Industrial Revolution changed the very soundscape of human life. Cities grew louder, denser, and they operated for longer hours. The quiet of the night was a resource that was rapidly becoming scarce. And so, another sleep gadget was born out of necessity. You reach over to your nightstand, fumbling in the dark. Your fingers find a small, littered tin. You open it. Inside, nestled in a bit of cotton, are two small, waxy balls. These are some of the earliest forms of earplugs. They are a simple concoction, often a mixture of beeswax, cotton, and perhaps a bit of lanolin or another oil to make them more pliable. You take one out. It's slightly sticky and soft. You roll it between your fingers, warming the wax until it's malleable, and then you gently press it into your ear canal. You do the same with the other. The effect is immediate and profound. The sharp, distinct sounds from outside the clutter, the whistle, the shout are instantly dulled, their edges sanded off. The world becomes a soft, muffled blur of low frequencies. The constant, irritating hum of the city recedes into a background murmur. It's not total silence, but it's a manufactured peace. That's you, taking active control over your own sensory input. This is a fascinating moment in the history of sleep. For millennia, protecting your sleep meant listening for threats. The snap of a twig, the creak of a floorboard you're hearing was your alarm system. But now, in this new urban world, your hearing has become a liability. The constant barrage of non-minus threatening but disruptive noise is the new enemy. The solution is to intentionally deafen yourself, to trade situational awareness for a state of inner quiet. It's a significant psychological shift. The invention of the commercial earplug is a story with a few different threads. A German company called Europax patented a wax version in the early 20th century, but homemade versions like the ones you're using were around long before that. There's still some academic curiosity about the exact formulas people used. Did they add certain herbs for supposedly calming effect? Did different apothecaries have their own secret recipes? It's the kind of folk knowledge that rarely gets written down but was a common part of domestic life. Here's a little side note on the fight against noise before earplugs became common. Some people would resort to tying a scarf or bandage tightly around their heads, covering their ears. It wasn't very effective, but it speaks to the desperation for just a little bit of quiet. Others would strategically place heavy furniture against the walls that faced the street, hoping the extra mass would deaden the sound. The wax in your ears feels strange. You can hear your own breathing, your own heartbeat, with an unnerving clarity. It's an internal, rather than external, soundscape now, but it's a steady, rhythmic sound, and it's much more conducive to sleep than the chaotic symphony of the city. This struggle against noise marks the beginning of a modern dilemma that we still face today. We live with a level of ambient noise that our ancestors would have found unbearable. We've just become accustomed to it. These simple, waxy balls in your ears are the direct ancestors of every foam earplug, every noise minus cancelling headphone, every white noise machine on the market today. They all serve the same fundamental purpose: to build a wall of silence around the sleeper. You shift in your bed, the wax plugs a slightly odd, full sensation in your ears. The muffled world outside seems a world away. You've battled the threats of violence, burglary, discomfort, cold, and bad air. Now you've battled the threat of noise itself. You've curated your environment with an almost scientific precision, using a collection of disparate, quirky gadgets. You've finally achieved a state of protected, warm, quiet darkness. Surely, now, you can say, but what if the problem isn't the world outside at all? What if the problem is you? What if, even in this perfect bubble, sleep still won't come? The next generation of inventors had a gadget for that. Till you've done everything right. The world is locked out, muffled, and bored. Yet, you lie there, eyes wide open in the dark. Your mind is racing, replying the day's events, worrying about tomorrow's appointments. The very effort of trying to fall asleep seems to be pushing it further away. This is the timeless frustration of insomnia, a problem that no spike cravat or wax earplug can solve. But imagine for a moment that it's a few decades later, perhaps the 1890 seconds or the early 1900 seconds. The age of electricity is dawning, and with it comes a new wave of inventive, if slightly mad, solutions. You could, if you had the means, acquire a brand new piece of bedroom furniture, the automatic rocking bed. It looks, at first glance, like a normal, albeit very solidly built, metal or wooden besta, but underneath, hidden within its frame or housed in a separate, discreet cabinet, is an electric motor or a clockwork mechanism. At the flick of a switch or the turn of a crank, the bed begins to move. It doesn't just vibrate or shake, it rocks. A slow, gentle, rhythmic, side minus to minus side or head minus to minus toe motion, designed to replicate the soothing sensation of being rocked in a cradle as an infant. You lie back, and the entire world begins to sway. The motion is steady, relentless, hypnotic. The idea is to bypass your overactive conscious mind and appeal directly to a more primitive, infantile reflex. You are, in essence, trying to trick your own brain into a state of calm. These beds were real. They were patented and sold as luxury health devices, often marketed towards sanitariums, hospitals, and the wealthy, stressed minus-out businessmen. The advertisements would praise their soporific qualities, promising to lull even the most persistent insomniac into a natural, restorative slumber without the use of dangerous drugs like laudanum or bromide. Imagine the experience, the low hum of the electric motor, the gentle creak of the mechanism, and the constant, unceasing motion. It would be disorienting at first. You'd have to learn to relax into it, to surrender control. Any tension in your body would fight against the rhythm. But if you could let go, you can imagine how the gentle, repetitive sensory input could eventually override your anxious thoughts, much like the rocking of a train or a ship can lull a passenger to sleep. This is a key moment in the history of sleep gadgets. The focus has shifted entirely inward. The problem is no longer the environment, it's the mind, and the solution is a mechanical one. This isn't about blocking out the world, but about actively manipulating your body's response to it. It's the beginning of a way of thinking that leads directly to modern sleep aids like weighted blankets, which use pressure to calm the nervous system, or apps that play specific frequencies to encourage brainwave entrainment. Here's a peculiar little detail: some of the more advanced models came with adjustable speeds. You could set it to a gentle sway for mild restlessness, or crank it up to a brisk rock for a more stubborn case of insomnia. Historians who study patent applications from this era are often amazed by the sheer variety and complexity of the proposed mechanisms. Some used pendulums, some used gears, some used pneumatic pistons. It was a golden age of mechanical problem-solving, and sleep was just one more puzzle to be cracked with cogs and levers. Of course, these rocking beds never became a mainstream item. They were expensive, mechanically complex, and prone to breaking down. You can just imagine the farcical scene of being woken up not by a noise outside, but by your own bed shuddering to a halt with a loud clang, or getting stuck permanently on the brisk rock setting. The potential for mechanical mishap was enormous. But even as a niche invention, the automatic rocking bed tells us something important about the era. It shows a growing medicalization of sleep. Sleep sense was no longer seen as a spiritual or moral failing, but as a treatable condition, a malfunction of the human machine that could be corrected with the right tool. The doctor's prescription was no longer just a bottle of tonic, but a piece of furniture. As you lie in your still, unminus rocking bed, you can appreciate the appeal. You are tired of being the active agent in your quest for sleep. You've tightened the ropes, blocked the noise, warmed the sheets. The thought of a machine taking over, of passively being lulled into unconsciousness, is deeply seductive. It's a desire to be cared for, to regress to a simpler, more helpless state. The desire for a truly deep, uninterrupted sleep, however, was tied to another, much darker anxiety. It wasn't just about feeling rested. It was about making sure that when you did finally fall into that profound, death-like slumber, it wasn't a 1-way trip. As you lie there, teetering on the edge of sleep, a fleeting, morbid thought might cross your mind. What if you fall into a slumber so deep, so profound, that no one can wake you? What if your stillness is mistaken for something more permanent? This wasn't just a passing fancy for people of this era. It was a deeply ingrained cultural terror, known as taphophobia, the fear of being buried alive. This fear was fueled by sensationalist newspaper stories, Gothic literature by authors like Edgar Allan Poe, and the very real limitations of 19th-century medicine. Doctors had few reliable tools to confirm death. A faint heartbeat, a shallow breath, or a coma induced by illness could easily be mistaken for the end. The thought of waking up in a coffin, trapped in suffocating darkness beneath 6 feet of earth, was a collective nightmare. And, as with every other anxiety of the age, inventors rushed to provide a solution. This led to one of the most macabre and fascinating categories of gadgets in history, the safety coffin. Imagine you are attending a funeral, a somber affair under a grey sky, but the coffin being lowered into the ground has some unusual features. Protruding from the lid is a small copper pipe leading up to the surface. Next to it, a cord runs through another sealed tube, connecting the deceased's hand to a bell mounted on a post above the grave. This was the basic model. If you were to wake up, your slightest movement could ring the bell, alerting the cemetery watchman, while the pipe would provide you with precious air until you could be rescued. The ingenuity and sheer desperation didn't stop there. Patents were filed for increasingly elaborate systems. Some coffins included a spring-loaded lid that would fly open at the pull of a lever. Others had a system of flags or signals that could be raised. One German design from the 1820s involved a complex system where the deceased's hands and feet were tied to strings connected to a housing above ground that contained not only a bell but also a modified piano hammer that would play a note, ensuring the alert was sufficiently musical. Here's a wonderfully bizarre detail. One inventor, a man named Christian Eisenbrecht, patented a system in 1843 that allowed the prematurely buried person to not only trigger an alarm, but also to admit air and light by opening a small grate on the coffin lid, all through a series of levers manipulated by their head and hands. It was an escape room, 6 feet under. These weren't just theoretical patents. Safety coffins were actually produced and sold, though they were a luxury item for the wealthy and the deeply paranoid. They were the ultimate insurance policy. Historians and archaeologists still debate how many of these were actually used and if there is any documented case of one successfully saving a life. The consensus is that there are no verified instances of the bell ever being rung for its intended purpose. Most recorded rings were attributed to the shifting of the earth or the natural processes of decomposition, but the lack of proven success didn't diminish their psychological power. Ordering a safety coffin was a way of asserting one last bit of control over your own fate. It was a gadget designed to function in the liminal space between life and death, a mechanical guardian against the ultimate medical error. It reflected a deep mistrust of the medical establishment and a profound anxiety about the fragility of the human body. The fear was so potent that it led to other, non-mechanical solutions as well. People would specify in their wills that their arteries should be severed before burial, or that they should be left in a waiting mortuary for a few days to see if any signs of putrefaction, the only sure sign of death, would appear. It was a society grappling with the very definition of life's end. As you lie in your bed, the idea is unsettling, but also strangely comforting. The deep sleep you crave is just a few steps away from the state that people feared the most. The line was blurry. The rocking bed promised to lull you into a state of near-minus unconsciousness, while the safety coffin stood ready in case you crossed the line entirely. This obsession reveals a truth about the pursuit of sleep. It's an act of vulnerability. You must surrender control of your body and mind. For a society obsessed with control, with gadgets to manage every aspect of life from street crime to stuffy air, this daily surrender was perhaps the most anxious moment of all. The safety coffin was the ultimate expression of that anxiety, a final, desperate attempt to install a user interface on the abyss. Thankfully, you are not in a coffin, but a warm, safe bed. The morbid thoughts begin to fade, replaced by a genuine, heavy-lidded drowsiness. The city outside is finally quieting down. Your breathing deepens. Sleep is coming, and when you wake, it won't be to the frantic ringing of a graveyard bell, but to a much more civilized and distinctly modern sound. The night passes in a deep, dreamless state. The anxieties of the Victorian darkness fade away, and you find yourself waking in a different era. The light filtering through the curtains seems brighter, less grey, It's sometime in the early 20th century, perhaps the 1920s or 30s. The world outside is one of automobiles, telephones, and electric lights that are no longer a novelty but a household staple. And your awakening is no longer left to chance or the crowing of a rooster. Instead of a jarring bell or a shout from downstairs, your return to consciousness begins with a gentle clinking sound. It's the sound of fine china. A moment later, a soft click, a faint hiss of steam, and then the delightful, aromatic scent of freshly brewed tea begins to fill the air. A few minutes pass in this pleasant, multi-sensory prelude to the day. Then, the soft, electric buzzer sounds, just loud enough to stir you, not to startle you. You open your eyes and turn your head. There on your bedside table sits an extraordinary machine, a masterpiece of chrome, bakelite, and polished wood. It's an automatic T- making alarm clock. This device, which would become famously known as the Teas made in Britain, is the culmination of a long-held dream to be awakened not by a punishment, but by a reward. It's a gadget that combines three separate functions into one elegant package. It is a clock, an electric kettle, and a teapot. The night before, you would have performed a simple ritual. You'd fill a small kettle with water, place a measure of tea leaves into a ceramic teapot, and position a teacup on a small tray. Then you set the alarm. At the appointed hour, the clock's mechanism doesn't just ring a bell. It completes an electrical circuit. This powers a heating element in the kettle. Once the water boils, steam pressure forces it through a tube and into the waiting teapot, where it steeps the tea. A few minutes later, after the tea has brewed, a secondary switch triggers the buzzer and often a small bedside lamp, letting you know that your perfect cup of tea is ready and waiting for you. The moment you wake up, you sit up in bed, the morning light now streaming in. You pour the tea. It's hot, fresh, and brewed exactly to your liking. This is civilization. This is progress. The fears of the night to garrot off. The burglar, the miasma seem like distant, primitive superstitions from this vantage point. The new anxieties are about efficiency, time management, and starting the day off right. The tea is made as the perfect tool for this new world. It's not about surviving the night. It's about optimizing the morning. The history of this invention is a tinkerer's dream. The very first version was patented in 1891 by a man named Samuel Rowbottom, but it was a clunky, gas-powered contraption that involved pilot lights and was probably as likely to set your house on fire as it was to brew tea. It was an idea ahead of its technology. It took the widespread adoption of domestic electricity to make the concept safe and practical. The man credited with inventing the first viable electric version was a clockmaker named George Absalom in 1932. Here's a fantastic, quirky detail about its development. One of the biggest challenges was ensuring the water from the kettle all went into the teapot, not all over the nightstand. Early prototypes apparently had a tendency to be quite messy, leading too much experimentation with the shape and angle of the transfer tube. The mechanics of a perfect pour were surprisingly complex. Historians of technology see the teas made as a landmark in domestic automation. It's more than just a novelty. It represents a fundamental shift in our relationship with machines. This wasn't a factory machine or a public utility like a telephone. This was a personal robot. It was a machine that performed a multi-step, sequential task, a ritual of hospitality, just for you. It was a servant in a box, promising a small moment of luxury and ease to the burgeoning middle classes. You sip your tea, looking at the device. It's a symbol of a new kind of comfort. The Victorian-era was about defensive comfort, keeping bad things out. This new era is about proactive comfort, adding good things in. The warm pig's bladder of the past has been replaced by a self-boiling kettle. The hand-cranked bed tightening has been replaced by a bed that is simply, reliably comfortable from the start. This new century is less about the fear of death and more about the fear of a poorly managed life. The enemy is no longer the darkness, but the inefficiency of the morning routine. The tea's made as your first ally in the day's battle for productivity, a gentle push to get you up and moving. But this new reliance on electricity for comfort introduced a new set of risks. The same invisible force that could gently brew your tea could also be harnessed for warmth, but with a frisson of danger that the humble pig's bladder never possessed. As you finish your tea, you contemplate getting out of bed, but the air is still a bit chilly, leading you to consider another, more modern, form of electric comfort. The tea has warmed you from the inside, but the morning air still has a bite. Kicking off the covers feels like a daunting proposition. In the old days, you'd have to get up and build a fire. But now, in this age of electric wonders, you have another option. You reach for a switch on a cord that snakes out from under your top blanket. You flick it, and you feel a slow, gentle, and deeply satisfying warmth begin to radiate upwards from the mattress. You are lying under one of the world's first electric blankets. It's a far cry from the sleek, micro-fleece versions of today. This early model is a more rudimentary affair. The heating element is a grid of insulated wires, noticeably thick and stiff, stitched inside a heavy, robust fabric cover, perhaps made of asbestos mine, or treated cotton for fire-minus resistance. You can feel the pattern of the wires through the blanket. It doesn't feel particularly plush, but the warmth it produces is undeniable. It's a steady, consistent heat that seems to penetrate right into your bones. This is a profound upgrade from the pig's bladder or the stone bed warmer. Those devices started hot and steadily cooled, their comfort fleeting. The electric blanket offers something new, sustained, controllable warmth. It's not just a temporary fix. It's a stable, managed environment. You are no longer just warming a spot in the bed. You are heating the entire sleeping surface to a precise, comfortable temperature. The invention of the electric blanket is often credited to an American inventor, I.E.E., in the early 1910s. Though his first versions were more like heated under-minus beds, the concept of an over-blanket that you could wrap yourself in came a bit later, gaining popularity in the 1930s. The first models were seen as a medical device, used in sanitary mess for patients suffering from respiratory ailments, the idea being that the consistent warmth was therapeutic. But using one of these early blankets required a leap of faith. You are, after all, willingly wrapping yourself in a web of live electrical wires and then going to sleep. The potential for disaster was never far from the user's mind. The two great fears were fire and electrocution. The insulation on the wires could crack or fray with use. A spilled drink, a pet chewing on the cord, or a simple manufacturing defect could have catastrophic consequences. Here's a chillingly weird fact about the early reputation. Newspapers from the era would occasionally run cautionary tales of electric blankets shorting out and causing fires. This led to a period where they were marketed with an almost obsessive focus on safety features. Thermostatic controls, a new invention, were a huge selling point. The blanket had a built-in sensor that would shut off the power if it got too hot, preventing it from overheating. The advertising copy spent as much time reassuring you that it wouldn't kill you as it did extolling the blanket's comfort. Historians studying consumer technology and risk perception are fascinated by the electric blanket. Why did people adopt a technology with such obvious, terrifying potential downsides? The answer lies in the immense appeal of the comfort it offered. For someone who had spent their life shivering through cold nights, the promise of sustained, effortless warmth was powerful enough to outweigh the perceived risk. It was a gamble, but one that millions of people were willing to take for a good night's sleep. You lie there, bathed in the gentle, slightly artificial warmth. It's a different kind of comfort from the organic heat of the bladder. This is a clean, dry, technological warmth. It feels modern. It feels controlled. You are the master of your own microclimate. You can defy the seasons, defy the inadequate heating of your home, all with the flick of a switch. This gadget also represents a new level of intimacy with technology. The tea's made sat on your nightstand, a helpful servant at arm's length. The electric blanket is different. You are in direct, prolonged physical contact with it. You are embracing the electrical grid, trusting it not to harm you as you lie in your most vulnerable state. It's a relationship built on a mixture of trust and low-grade background anxiety. Every so often you might sniff the air, just to be sure you don't smell burning fabric. The pursuit of comfort has laid you down a strange path. You've gone from wearing defensive spikes to inviting a live current into your bed. The nature of risk has changed. The danger is no longer an external attacker, but a potential malfunction in the very devices you've brought into your sanctuary to make you feel safe and comfortable. This desire to improve yourself, to optimize your environment, was just limited to comfort and convenience. The same technological optimism that gave you the tease made in the electric blanket was also being applied to another, more personal project, the pursuit of beauty, even while you slept. Basking in the electric wall, feeling safe and optimized, your thoughts might drift to the mirror you'll have to face soon. The early 20th century, especially from the 1920s onwards, saw the explosive growth of the modern beauty industry. For the first time, beauty wasn't just for the aristocracy or stage performers. It was a project that the average woman was encouraged and expected to undertake. And this project didn't stop when the lights went out. The concept of the beauty sleep was taken to a whole new, literal level with a host of bizarre contraptions designed to be worn overnight. You can almost feel the phantom sensation of one of these devices. Imagine, before going to bed, strapping on what was known as a frown IE or a wrinkle eradicator. It's a small, adhesive patch, often made of a stiff, paper-like material, that you would moisten and stick directly onto your forehead or between your eyebrows. The idea was that this patch would hold your skin taut all night, physically preventing you from frowning or furrowing your brow in your sleep. You would awaken, supposedly, with a smooth, unlined forehead. It was a purely mechanical approach to wrinkle prevention. But the ingenuity didn't stop there. For more comprehensive facial restructuring, you could don a face mold or beauty mask. This wasn't a soothing clay mask, but a complex, often terrifying looking piece of headgear. Picture a rubbery or fabric mask, crisscrossed with straps, buckles, and tensionos. It would cover your entire face, with cutouts for your eyes, nose, and mouth. By tightening the various straps, you could apply pressure to specific areas, supposedly to reduce puffiness, lift sagging jowls, or even reshape your chin. One popular brand, the Unbender's glamour mask, looked like a cross between a fencing mask and a Hannibal Lecter prop. You would go to sleep looking like a science fiction experiment, all in the hope of waking up looking like a movie star. It speaks to a new kind of pressure. The Victorian woman's primary duty was to be morally upright. The modern woman's duty was to be visually appealing. And sleep, once a simple state of rest, was now being repurposed as a productive, beautifying workshop. The logic behind these devices was a mix of pseudo-scientific theory and wishful thinking. They were based on the idea that the face was like clay, something that could be molded and set into a more desirable shape with sustained pressure. Here's a particularly strange tidbit: some of these masks were even medicated, meaning the rubber was infused with substances that promised to nourish the skin or stimulate circulation. The claims were, of course, entirely unsubstantiated by any real science. Historians of beauty culture see these gadgets as a fascinating physical manifestation of societal anxieties about aging. They represent a desperate, almost comical attempt to fight a natural process with straps and rubber. The ads for these products, found in women's magazines of the era, are a goldmine of psychological manipulation, preying on insecurities and promising miraculous transformations, all for the price of looking monstrous to anyone who happened to see you sleeping. Beyond the face, there were other contraptions. You could wear a chin strap, a simple band that looped under your chin and fastened over the top of your head, designed to combat the dreaded double chin. There were even contraptions for your nose, small clamp-like devices you were meant to wear at night to supposedly slim or straighten the bridge. Imagine a household where both partners are fully kitted out for their optimized sleep. One is wearing a rubber face molding mask and a chin strap, while the other is snoring away thanks to a different kind of strap on device designed to keep his mouth shut. It's a vision of modern intimacy that is both hilarious and slightly tragic. The bedroom, once a place of rest and connection, has become a laboratory for self-improvement. filled with humming electric blankets and people strapped into corrective gear. These gadgets reveal a shift in the purpose of sleep. It's no longer just for rest or survival. It's now a passive but productive period. You can wake up rested, on time, with a cup of tea ready, warmer than the ambient air, and, if the ads were to be believed, visibly younger and more beautiful than when you went to bed. It's the ultimate life minus hack dream. This desire to understand and control what happens during sleep was about to take a giant leap forward. The focus would shift from the external and the mechanical to the internal and the biological. The next step wasn't about molding the face, but about reading the mind. Scientists were about to plug the sleeper into a machine, not for warmth or beauty, but for data. You've left the sterile sleep lab behind, but the idea of scientifically optimized sleep has firmly taken root. It's the 1950s, the age of scientific breakthroughs and Cold War ambition. The air hums not with the sound of a tease made or an electric blanket, but with the quiet whir of electronic equipment. You are no longer just a sleeper. You are a subject, attached to your scalp, near your eyes, and on your chin are a series of small, coin-minus-sized metal discs called electrodes. Wires run from these electrodes to a boxy, intimidating machine in the corner of the room. This machine is an electrodepeller array pH, or EEG. For the first time in history, the mysterious, private world of your sleeping brain is being rendered visible, translated into a series of jagged, inky lines on a roll of paper. You close your eyes, feeling self-minus conscious and slightly foolish with the strange, sticky conductors glued to your head. You've been instructed to simply fall asleep as you normally would. But how can you sleep normally under these conditions? You are being watched, not by a person, but by a machine that promises to see directly into your mind. This is the dawn of the modern sleep lab. In 1953, two researchers at the University of Chicago, Eugenius Ayer and Sky and Nathaniel K. Elliott-Mann, were using EEG to study the sleep of infants. They noticed something peculiar. Several times during the night, the infants' eyes would start to dart back and forth beneath their closed eyelids. At the same time, the EEG machine would show brain activity that was surprisingly similar to that of an awake, alert brain. They had discovered rapid eye movement, or REM sleep. When they woke their subjects up during these periods, they found something incredible. The subjects almost always reported that they had been dreaming. This was the breakthrough. For thousands of years, dreams had been the province of priests, poets, and psychoanalysts. They were messages from the gods, expressions of the subconscious, or random neural firings. But now, they had a physical, measurable correlate. Dreaming was no longer just a subjective experience. It was a biological event. You drift off. The researchers in the next room watch the spools of paper. As you fall into deep sleep, your brain waves become slow and rolling. Great, deep delta wave. Your body is still. Your breathing regular. Then, it happens. Your eyes start to move erratically beneath your eyelids. Your breathing and heart rate become irregular, and the pen on the EEG machine starts to scribble frantically, the lines becoming tight and fast. You are in the dream world, and the machine is taking notes. This discovery changed everything. It professionalized the study of sleep. The quirky, entrepreneurial gadgets of the past, the rocking beds and electric brushes, suddenly seemed like primitive folk medicine. No, sleep was a matter for white minor-skirted scientists and serious, data minus-driven analysis. The focus shifted from how to get to sleep to what is the quality of your sleep. The concept of sleep architecture, the cyclical pattern of REM and un-REM stages was born. Here's a fascinating, little minus known aspect of this research. In the early days, there was a huge debate about the function of REM sleep. To this day, scientists are still not in complete agreement on why we dream. Is it for memory consolidation, processing emotions, problem minus solving, or simply a byproduct of neural housekeeping? The EEG machine could show them when you were dreaming, but it couldn't tell them why. It opened up a new frontier of questions. The sleep lab environment itself was a kind of gadget room, minus-sized device for capturing sleep. but it was the antithesis of comfort. The goal was not to help you sleep better, but to precisely measure how you slept, however poorly, in a controlled environment. The irony is that the very act of being measured could disrupt the thing being measured. The first -night effect, where subjects sleep terribly in the lab simply because of the strange, intimidating environment, is a well-known problem for sleep researchers. You are a pioneer in a new landscape. The data scrolling out of the EEG machine is a map of your inner world, a place no one had ever charted before. It revealed that sleep is not a passive state of shutdown, but a highly active and structured process. Your brain is working hard all night, cycling through different states, performing vital functions. This new scientific understanding of sleep would eventually trickle down to the public. It would inform the development of new treatments for sleep disorders like apnea and narcolepsy. But it also created a new kind of anxiety. The good sleeper was no longer just someone who felt rested. They were someone whose sleep architecture was correct. You could now fail at sleeping on a biological level. The desire to not just understand but to influence this inner world was the logical next step. If you could see when someone was dreaming, could you, perhaps, communicate with them? Could you even give them control over their own dreams? The next generation of sleep gadgets would try to do just that, moving from the laboratory back to the bedroom, with a device that promised to make you a master of your own subconscious. You've left the sterile sleep lab behind, but the idea of scientifically optimized sleep has firmly taken root. It's the late 1960 seconds or early 1970 seconds, an era obsessed with space travel, futurism, and the potential of technology to reshape human experience. People are looking for ultimate escapes, perfect environments, and absolute calm. And for sleep, this desire manifested in some truly avant-garde, wonderfully weird gadgets, like the sensory deprivation sleep helmet. Imagine this: you're sitting in a plush armchair, or perhaps lying on a specially designed ergonomic lounger, and then you put on the helmet. It's not a small, sleek device like a pair of headphones. This is a substantial, often spherical or egg-shaped contraption, usually made of molded plastic or fiberglass. It's designed to completely encase your head, sealing off your eyes, ears, and often even blocking peripheral light entirely. Some models are surprisingly bulky, like a diver's helmet for dry land. The goal is simple: total sensory deprivation. No light, no sound, no external distractions whatsoever. The helmet is often lined with sound-absorbing foam and designed to fit snugly, forming a perfect seal around your face and neck. The idea is that by stripping away all external stimuli, your mind will be free to truly relax, to descend into a state of profound peace, unburdened by the relentless input of the waking world. It's like putting your brain in a quiet, dull, comfortable closet. This concept was heavily influenced by the psychological research into sensory deprivation tanks, which were gaining popularity at the time for their purported meditative and consciousness-altering effects. If you could achieve those states while awake, imagine what you could achieve for sleep. The sleep helmet was the personal, home version of this experimental technology. It promised ultimate escapism, a retreat into oneself in a world that was becoming increasingly noisy and crowded. You might feel a slight sense of claustrophobia when you first put it on. The darkness is absolute, the silence profound, almost ringing in your ears. There's no light leak from around your nose, no distant hum from the street outside. It's just you, your thoughts, and the gentle whoosh of your own breathing, amplified within the enclosed space. For some, this was incredibly calming. For others, it was deeply unsettling, prompting an immediate urge to tear it off. Here's a peculiar little feature. Some of these helmets incorporated a very subtle, internal white noise generator, not to block out external sounds, because there were none, but to provide a consistent, non-distracting hum inside the helmet itself. This was supposed to prevent the ringing in the ears that can occur in truly absolute silence, and to give the mind something innocuous to focus on, preventing it from latching onto intrusive thoughts. It's a paradox, using sound to create silence, Academics studying the history of psychological tools often look at these helmets as a perfect example of a technological solution to a perceived psychological problem. Were they truly effective for promoting sleep, or were they more a symbol of the era's fascination with altering consciousness and controlling perception? The consensus is that while some users found them incredibly helpful for meditation or relaxation, their practical use for nightly sleep was limited. Most people found them too uncomfortable or too alienating for long-term use. But the sheer existence of these helmets speaks volumes about the human desire for escape. In an age where the news was filled with war, social unrest, and rapidly advancing technology, the idea of completely disconnecting, of creating your own personal void, was deeply appealing. It was a gadget for shutting down, for going offline before the internet even existed. The electric blanket offered controlled warmth. The teas made offered convenience. The sleep helmet offered absolute control over your sensory input. It was the ultimate, albeit extreme, evolution of the earplug, not just muffling the world, but extinguishing it entirely. You eventually drift off, lost in the engineered void. When you wake, perhaps a few hours later, you lift the helmet off. The world rushes back in the light. The faint sounds from outside, the awareness of your own body. You feel disoriented, perhaps, but also strangely refreshed. It was a deep dive, a plunge into the quiet depths of your own mind. This desire to manipulate your internal state, to control the very content of your consciousness during sleep, would soon take another form. Instead of blocking out reality, the next wave of gadgets would try to help you create it. To become the director of your own dream narratives, the focus shifts from merely sleeping to how you dream. You emerge from the silence of the sensory deprivation helmet, perhaps a little disoriented, but undeniably rested. The rigid, isolating embrace of the helmet gave you a taste of ultimate control over your environment. But now, it's the 1970 seconds, and the cultural pendulum has swung from rigid containment to fluid freedom. The future of sleep isn't about being locked down, it's about floating, and for that, you step into the bedroom of the future, a room dominated by the most iconic sleep gadget of the era, the waterbed. It's impossible to ignore a massive, often garishly decorated, wooden or plastic frame, holding what appears to be an oversized, shimmering water balloon. This isn't your grand minus roped mattress or even a spring mattress. This is something entirely new, entirely tactile. It's an invention that captured the cultural spirit of the 70 seconds, rebellious, sensual, and just a little bit eccentric. You approach it with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. It looks unstable. You gingerly perch on the edge, and the entire surface ripples beneath you as you slowly recline. The sensation is utterly unique. Instead of firm resistance, the mattress gives way, enveloping your body in a soft, undulating embrace. You don't just lie on it, you seem to float in it. Your weight is distributed evenly, every curve supported. It feels like being suspended in liquid, a sensation of weightlessness. The comfort is immediate for some. For others, it's a strange, almost unsettling novelty. The surface is constantly, subtly shifting. Every movement you make sends ripples across the entire bed. If your partner turns over, you feel the gentle sway. If you adjust your pillow, the water beneath you subtly shifts to accommodate. It's a dynamic sleep environment, never quite still. The waterbed was invented by Charles Hall, a design student at San Francisco State University in the late 1960 seconds. Originally as a part of a thesis project on fluid furniture, he was experimenting with creating a more comfortable chair for people with disabilities, and eventually, the idea grew into a full fledged bed. It was marketed as the ultimate in comfort, therapeutic for back pain, and, perhaps most famously, as an aid to intimacy. The gentle undulation, the warmth, many head heaters to keep the water at a comfortable temperature, and the sheer novelty certainly added a different dimension to bedroom activities. This gadget encapsulates the 70 seconds perfectly. It was about breaking free from conventions, about new experiences, about a kind of relaxed hedonism. The rigid structures of the past were out. Fluid, organic forms were in. It was a statement piece as much as a sleep aid. People spent serious money on these, decorating their bedrooms around them, often with shag carpets and lava lamps. It was the ultimate cool bed. Here's a practical, slightly less glamorous fact about waterbeds. They were notorious for leaks. Imagine waking up not to a puddle from a pig's bladder, but a literal flood. Early models used less robust vinyl, and a pinhole leak could lead to thousands of gallons of water escaping onto your floorboards, seeping into the apartment below, and ruining your shag carpet. Manufacturers eventually improved the vinyl and added safety liners, essentially a giant plastic bathtub underneath the water bladder to contain any leaks. But the fear of a waterbed catastrophe lingered. Historians of design and material culture sometimes debate the waterbed's true impact. Was it a genuine innovation in comfort, or simply a fleeting cultural fad? A novelty item that rode the wave of the feel-of era and then faded as tastes changed and practical issues became apparent. While its peak popularity lasted only a couple of decades, its influence on modernist design, particularly the move towards more supportive and conforming materials like memory foam, is undeniable. It shifted the paradigm from rigid support to adaptable cushioning. As you lie there, feeling the gentle, continuous motion, you might experience a strange sensation. It's not quite season's kiss, but a persistent, subtle awareness of being afloat. Some people found this deeply relaxing, a return to the womb. Others found it mildly nauseating, or simply too distracting to achieve deep sleep. The rocking bed of the past provided a controlled, mechanical motion. The waterbed offers a much more organic, less predictable sway. But for all its novelty and perceived comfort, the waterbed, like many sleep innovations before it, was still a passive experience. You lay on it, and it did its thing. The next frontier, however, wasn't about the bed itself, but about what happened inside your head. If the sleep lab could see your dreams, could a gadget help you control them? That was the ambition of the coming decade. You surfed the waves of the waterbed, experienced the fluid comfort of the 70 seconds. Now, let's fast forward to the 1980 seconds. The digital age is dawning, and with it, a new kind of self-help and self-optimization. People aren't just interested in having dreams, they want to direct them. This is the era of the lucid dream craze, and for that, a very specific type of gadget emerges: the dream minus induction glasses or goggle. Imagine lying in your bed, perhaps still a waterbed, embracing the ultimate in comfort. But before you drift off, you put on a pair of oversized, slightly clunky goggles. They look like something a welder or a lab technician might wear, usually made of dark plastic, with a strap to hold them firmly to your head. And inside, near your eyes, are small, unobtrusive red LED lights. Connected to the goggles is a small, battery-powered control box, perhaps resting on your nightstand. These are lucid dream induction devices. The theory behind them is based on the scientific discovery of REM sleep from the 1950 seconds. We now know that dreams primarily occur during REM sleep, characterized by those rapid eye movements. The goggles contain sensors that can detect when you enter this REM stage. Once detected, they trigger the small LED lights to flash gently in your field of vision, or sometimes play a subtle tone. The idea is that these flashes or tones are subtle enough not to wake you fully, but just strong enough to be incorporated into your dreamscape. If you see a flashing red light within your dream, it's meant to serve as a reality check, a cue to make you realize, hey, I'm dreaming. Once you have this realization, the hope is that you can then take control of your dream, becoming a lucid dreamer, flying, conjuring objects, changing the scenery, or even solving real-life problems within your nocturnal adventures. You strap them on. They feel a bit awkward, pressing gently against your temples. You close your eyes, the darkness absolute. You try to fall asleep, a strange mix of anticipation and self-consciousness. Will it work? Will you see a red light in your dream? This pursuit of lucid dreaming wasn't just a quirky hobby. It was seen by some as a path to psychological growth, a way to conquer fears, explore creativity, or even practice skills. It blurred the lines between waking and sleeping, making your dream life an extension of your active self. Here's a particularly amusing detail about these early devices: getting the light intensity just right was a huge challenge. Too bright, and it would wake you up entirely. Too dim, and you wouldn't notice it in your dream. Early users reported mixed results, with many waking up frustrated or simply not noticing the cues. It was a very hit-minus or minus technology. Sleep scientists today still debate the overall efficacy of these off-minus shelf devices. While the concept of using external cues to induce lucidity is scientifically valid, the consumer products often fell short of their grand promises. The most famous of these devices was probably the Dream Light, released in the mid-80 seconds, followed by several similar products. They were marketed in scientific magazines, New Age catalogs, and even in popular psychology books. This was a direct consumer application of complex sleep research, bringing the lab's findings right into your bedroom. This gadget represents a significant shift in the human relationship with sleep. We've gone from simply trying to survive the night, to optimizing the night, to now trying to control the very content of our unconscious minds. Sleep is no longer a passive surrender. It's an active playground. You drift off, eyes pass, suddenly, in your dream, a flash of red light. Is it part of the dream, or is it the goggles? The moment of realization might be fleeting, or it might be profound. You might suddenly find yourself soaring over a familiar landscape, aware that you can change it with a thought, or you might simply dismiss the flash as part of the dream's narrative and continue on your merry way, oblivious. Whether you achieve full lucidity or not, the device itself embodies a profound ambition to hack the brain, to extend waking consciousness into the realm of sleep. It was a precursor to the biofeedback and brain-computer interface technologies we see emerging today. Before all the excitement of controlling your dreams, there's a more prosaic, yet far more common, problem that plagues millions of sleepers and their partners: the relentless, often deafening, sound of snoring. The next generation of sleep gadgets would turn its attention to this fundamental, disruptive noise, seeking to silence it by any means necessary. You might have successfully navigated the dreamscape, perhaps even soaring through it with lucid control, but the moment you wake, a very real, very earthly problem asserts itself. If you share your bed, or even live within earshot of others, you know it while snoring. That guttural, rhythmic, often violent sound that can shatter the peace of a household and test the patience of even the most devoted partner. It's the 1990 seconds now. The digital revolution is in full swing, but when it comes to snoring, the solutions often still lean into the absurd and uncomfortable, a testament to the sheer desperation to silence this nocturnal beast. You browse through catalogs and infomercials, and you discover a whole new category of gadgets designed to combat the dreaded snore. First, there are the external devices. You might try a nasal dilator. This is a small, flexible plastic or metal spring-like device that you insert into your nostrils before bed. The idea is that it gently pushes your nasal passages open, allowing for better airflow and supposedly reducing the vibrations that cause snoring. It feels incredibly strange at first, like having tiny, clear crab claws clamped inside your nose. Then there's the anti-snore chin strap. This is a simple, elasticized fabric band that wraps under your chin and over the top of your head, essentially holding your mouth closed. The theory is that if your mouth stays shut, you'll be forced to breathe through your nose, thus preventing mouth-breathing snoring. It's an exercise in discomfort, making you feel as if your jaw is being perpetually held hostage. You look in the mirror, and you resemble a patient recovering from a jaw injury, or perhaps a cartoon character. But the most wonderfully bizarre category are the positional therapy devices. Many people snore loudest when sleeping on their backs. So, how do you prevent that? One popular gadget was the anti-snore backpack. This was literally a small, soft backpack or a specially designed pajama top with a tennis ball or a similar rigid object sewn into a pouch on the back. The moment you roll onto your back in your sleep, the discomfort of the ball presses into your spine, prompting you to instinctively roll onto your side again. It's a low-minus stick, purely physical aversion therapy. You lie in bed, perhaps with a nasal dilator making your nose feel unnaturally wide, and the chin strap creating an odd tension around your head. And if you're a back-minus sleeper, you're trying to ignore the tennis ball pressing into your spine. It's a Rube Goldberg machine of discomfort, all in the name of peace and quiet. The science behind snoring is complex. It's often caused by the relaxation of throat muscles during sleep, which narrows the airway and causes the soft tissues to vibrate. While these gadgets might offer temporary relief for some, they rarely address the root cause. Sleep medical professionals now largely agree that many the minus counter, anti-minus snoring devices offer limited effectiveness, often fail to treat underlying conditions like sleep apnea, where snoring is a symptom of a more serious breathing disorder. Yet, for decades, these strange inventions were the only readily available solutions for frustrated snorers and their even more frustrated partners. Here's a slightly gross but fascinating detail about these devices. The nasal dilators and chin straps often caused skin irritation, and the tennis ball pajamas could lead to back pain from constantly forcing the sleeper into an unnatural position. The cure could sometimes be worse than the auditory disease. The invention of these gadgets highlights a universal truth sometimes. The greatest innovations come from desperation. When a problem is widespread, annoying, and impacts relationships, people will try almost anything to solve it, no matter how uncomfortable or silly the solution appears. This era of anti-minus snoring devices marked a shift. Sleep problems were no longer just about personal comfort or fears of the unknown. They were now interpersonal problems, affecting not just the sleeper but those around them. The battle for a good night's sleep had become a domestic war, fought with plastic clips and tennis balls. But all these gadgets, from the electric hairbrush to the lucid dream goggles, were largely about feeling better or acting better. The next revolution in sleep was about to move beyond subjective experience. It would be about numbers. It would be about data. The era of the quantified self was dawning, and sleep, that most mysterious of human states, was about to become a spreadsheet. You've survived the indignity of the anti-minus snoring chin strap and the discomfort of the tennis ball pajamas. It's the early 2000 seconds, and the digital age is truly upon us. The internet is in every home, and miniature electronics are getting smarter and more pervasive. The new mantra isn't just about improving sleep, it's about measuring sleep. You are about to become a participant in the quantified self movement, and for that, you strap on one of the first consumer sleep tracking devices. Imagine slipping a sleep, relatively thin band onto your wrist before bed. It looks like a minimalist watch, perhaps with a small digital display or just a few indicator lights. This isn't a medical device from a sleep lab, full of sticky electrodes and wires. This is a gadget for the everyday person, designed to be worn comfortably all night long. Inside this unassuming wristband are accelerometers, tiny sensors that detect your movement. Some models also include a photoplethysmography sensor, which uses light to detect changes in blood volume just under your skin, thereby inferring your heart rate. The idea is simple. By tracking your movement and heart rate throughout the night, the device can estimate when you are awake, when you are in light sleep, and when you are in deeper, non-minus REM sleep. Some even attempt to estimate REM sleep, though with varying degrees of accuracy. You wear it, feeling slightly self-minus conscious. It's a constant, silent observer. You wake up in the morning, and the first thing you do is connect it to your computer or, later, open an app on your smartphone, and there it is, a graph of your night, a visual representation of your sleep efficiency. You see peaks and valleys, showing periods of restlessness and periods of stillness. A sleep score is calculated, a single number summarizing the quality of your rest. This is a profound shift. For millennia, sleep was a subjective experience. You woke up feeling rested or tired, That was the extent of the data. Now, your sleep is a set of objective metrics. You can see how long it took you to fall asleep, how many times you woke up, and how much deep sleep you supposedly achieved. Sleep is no longer just a feeling. It's data to be analyzed, optimized, and shared. This marks the beginning of the bio-minus hacking trend applied to sleep. The problem isn't just that you feel tired, it's that your sleep score is too low. The solution isn't just to sleep more, it's to get more efficient sleep. The very language around sleep begins to change, adopting terms from business and technology. Here's a quirky little detail about these early trackers: their accuracy, especially in distinguishing between different sleep stages, was often questionable. They were great at telling you when you were awake or restless, but less reliable at pinpointing REM versus deep non-REM sleep. Many of the sleep stage classifications were based on algorithms and assumptions, not direct brainwave measurements like those in a professional sleep lab. Sleep researchers often caution that while these devices are excellent at tracking patterns and consistency, the precise stage detection can be quite inaccurate, leading to unnecessary anxiety for users. Yet, despite these limitations, the sleep tracker became a phenomenon. It tapped into a deep human desire for self-knowledge and self-improvement. It also created a new form of anxiety, the anxiety of the bad sleep score. You might wake up feeling perfectly fine, but if your app tells you your score was low, it can genuinely affect your mood and perceived well-being for the day. The data, in a strange twist, began to override your own bodily sensations. You now have a dashboard for your unconscious hours. You can compare your sleep patterns night to night, week to week. You can experiment: if I drink coffee after 3 p.m., how does it affect my deep sleep? If I exercise in the evening, does my time to fall asleep decrease? Sleep becomes a variable in a personal experiment, something to be manipulated and refined. The progression of sleep gadgets has brought us from external threats to internal states, from simple comfort to scientific measurement. We started with the physical protection of a cravat, moved to the mechanical manipulation of the body, then the scientific observation of the brain, and now to the constant, pervasive tracking of our biological rhythms. This quantification of sleep was just the beginning. The next logical step was to take all that data and use it to actively change your environment, to create a fully integrated, intelligent system that could manage your sleep for you, from the moment you lay down until the moment you were gently, optimally awakened. The smart bedroom was about to arrive. You've got your sleep data, meticulously tracked by your wristband, telling you exactly how efficient your unconscious hours were. But knowing you had a bad night is one thing. Doing something about it is another. Welcome to the present day, where the individual sleep gadget has evolved into an integrated, intelligent ecosystem. You are now stepping into the smart bedroom, a space where technology doesn't just assist your sleep, but actively manages it. Imagine your bedroom now. It looks sleek, minimalist, perhaps with subtle ambient lighting. There are no clunky goggles or visible wires. Instead, the technology is woven seamlessly into the fabric of the room itself. Your mattress is no longer just a water-filled bladder or a sprung coil. It's a smart mattress. This smart mattress contains an array of sophisticated sensors, pressure plates to track your movement and position, microphones to detect snoring and breathing irregularities, and even temperature sensors to monitor your body heat. It's collecting data on you all night, far more comprehensively than your simple wristband ever could. But it doesn't just collect data, it reacts. If you start to snore, the mattress might imperceptibly inflate a small air bladder near your head, gently shifting your position just enough to open your airway, ideally without waking you. If you get too warm, the mattress's internal temperature control system might subtly cool the surface beneath you. If your partner prefers a different firmness, the mattress can adjust each side independently. It's like having a silent, invisible sleep concierge adjusting your environment all night long. But the smart mattress is just one part of the symphony. Your bedside lamp is a smart light that gradually dims in the evening with a warm, amber glow to encourage melatonin production. and then slowly brightens in the morning with a cool, blue- spectrum light to help you wake up naturally. Your curtains or blinds are automated, opening slowly with the dawn or closing at a set time. Your thermostat is linked, adjusting the room temperature to ideal sleep conditions based on your sleep stage, perhaps cooling it slightly during deep sleep and warming it gently as you approach wake signals. You lie down in this perfectly calibrated environment. It's a feeling of complete surrender, but not to the unknown. It's a surrender to an algorithm, a series of pre-programmed conditions designed to optimize your rest. The room is thinking for you, reacting to your every subtle shift, creating a bespoke cocoon of comfort. This represents the ultimate in sleep gadget evolution. We've gone from manually tightening ropes and boiling water to a fully automated system that anticipates and responds to your needs in real time. The individual gadgets of the past were isolated solutions. Now, they are interconnected, working in harmony. Here's a slightly unnerving aspect of this technology: the sheer volume of data being collected about your most vulnerable state. Your smart mattress knows when you're restless, when you snore, when you get out of bed in the middle of the night. This data is often uploaded to the cloud, analyzed by algorithms, and then fed back to you in helpful graphs and recommendations. Privacy advocates and ethicists are increasingly raising questions about data ownership and security in these smart home ecosystems. Who owns your sleep data? How is it used? Could it affect your health insurance premiums? For example, it's a new frontier of concern. The irony is that in pursuit of a perfectly optimized sleep, you might actually be introducing a new layer of anxiety. Are you sleeping well enough according to the data? Are you getting enough deep sleep? The pressure to perform, to meet a metric, extends even into your unconscious hours. The smart bedroom embodies a powerful promise: effortless, perfect sleep. The technology is so seamless, you barely notice it. It's a dream of ultimate control and personalization, where every aspect of your sleep environment is precisely tuned to your biological rhythms and personal preferences. You close your eyes in this technologically advanced sanctuary. The soft light dims perfectly. The temperature adjusts imperceptibly. The mattress cradles you. You've come a long way from the fears of Garrotting and bad air. You've built a digital fortress, the Biomanchekini optimized chamber for rest. But after all this innovation, all these gadgets, all this data, there's a quiet question that still lingers. Have we, in our relentless pursuit of the perfect sleep through technology, perhaps lost something simpler, something more fundamental? You lie in the intelligent embrace of your smart bedroom. Every parameter perfectly tuned. The light is ideal, the temperature just so, the mattress silently responding to your every shift. The air is pure, the soundscape a gentle hum or complete silence, as you prefer. You have, in essence, engineered the perfect sleep environment. You are the culmination of centuries of human ingenuity, from a simple pig's bladder to a wirelessly connected sleep sanctuary. You've come a long way from the smoky, gaslit streets where you wore a spiked covet to ward off Garrotting. You've moved through homes, secured by gunpowder alarms, slept on beds tightened by hand, and endured the peculiar sensation of a heated animal organ. You've journeyed through the optimism of electric atribus, the precise convenience of a T-making qual, and the mild peril of early electric blankets. You've bravely donned bizarre beauty masks and uncomfortable anti-snoring devices. You even wore goggles to hack your dreams and wristbands to quantify your unconscious hours. Every step of the way, humanity invented a gadget, a tool, a system to help you sleep better, safer, more efficiently, or more beautifully. But, as you lie there, surrounded by all this perfect technology, a quiet thought begins to form. Is all this necessary? Does all this optimization truly make sleep fundamentally better? Or does it just add layers of complexity to a process that, for millions of years, humans managed just fine without an app or an algorithm? Consider the sheer mental energy invested in this pursuit. The anxiety about safety, then about comfort, then about efficiency, then about data. Each gadget, while solving one problem, often introduced another. The Anti-Garroting Cravat offered security, but was uncomfortable. The Burglar alarm was loud. The electric blanket was warm but carried the risk of fire. The sleep tracker gave you data but also a new metric to worry about. We built a machine for sleep, and in doing so, perhaps we made sleep itself feel like a machine that needs to be constantly monitored and maintained. The irony is that sometimes, in our relentless quest for the perfect sleep, we overlook the simplest ingredients. What if what we truly need isn't a smart mattress that adjusts to our every micro-minus movement, but simply a quiet room? What if the ideal solution isn't a precise light minus temperature minus sound orchestration, but just a calm mind and a body that has had enough activity during the day? Here's a peculiar modern counter-minus trend: the rise of digital detox retreats and minimalist sleep movements. People are actively seeking to remove technology from their bedrooms, to go back to basics. They're trading smart lights for simple blackout curtains, sleep trackers for a journal, and complex sound machines for pure silence. They're rediscovering that sometimes the best sleep gadget is no gadget at all. It's a rebellion against the very idea that sleep needs to be fixed by external means. Historians and futurists alike are still debating whether this era of hyper-optimization will ultimately lead to a healthier relationship with sleep or a more anxious one. Have we gained true rest, or merely quantified our restlessness? Does the data make us feel more in control, or more beholden to numbers that might not truly reflect our well-being? It's a complex question, one that your future self will likely continue to ponder. You've explored the entire spectrum, from basic survival tools to advanced neuro-hacking devices. You've seen how human fears, desires, and scientific understanding have shaped the objects we bring into our most vulnerable moments. The journey through these odd gadgets for sleep is a journey through human history itself, a tale of anxiety and ingenuity, of comfort and complication, all in the pursuit of that elusive, essential state of unconsciousness. And now, as the last remnants of the day fade and the stillness of the night truly descends, perhaps the greatest luxury of all isn't the most advanced gadget, but the simple, unburdened freedom to just let go. The soft hum of the smart bedroom begins to fade now, blurring at the edges, becoming just a distant memory. Your thoughts, once sharp and analytical, are growing hazy, drifting like smoke across a calm lake. The weight of the world, with all its gadgets and anxieties, seems to lift. You are no longer consciously thinking, no longer analyzing. The stories we've shared tonight, of strange contraptions and forgotten fears, are dissolving into the quiet background hum of your own inner world. The warmth around you is no longer from an electric blanket, but from the natural heat of your own body, settled and content. The darkness isn't engineered by a helmet or smart blinds, but simply the gentle absence of light that invites your mind to roam free. You are falling, softly, gently, into the vast, silent ocean of sleep. There's nothing more to do, nothing more to adjust, no more data to collect, just peace, just rest. You are safe, you are warm, you are quiet. The journey is over, the stories are done. Just let your breath deepen, your body relax, and surrender to the soft embrace of the night. The end of the article. Good night.